Well, I find it extraordinary that the Marshall government and the Transport Minister, Stefan Knoll, cannot see the enormous economic benefits that this wine train initiative, which comes with a five-star hotel, would bring to the Barossa Valley, particularly in the COVID-19 era, when tourism in South Australia is really on its knees, and we need innovative lateral thinking ideas like this one. And to me, the wine train is an absolute no-brainer, because the Barossa Valley, as we all know, is one of the greatest wine regions in the world, and people would love to get there, not just by car, but also other alternative means, particularly through rail transport, to enjoy the sights of the Barossa Valley, to be able to enjoy the produce, the wines, and be able to do it in a leisurely fashion and do it in an enjoyable way. Because as we know, rail is one of the great pleasures for people in the tourism industry.
Why do you think the current state Liberal government isn't interested in this?
I just can't work it out, because to me it's an absolute no-brainer. You have a facility there which is unused, which is the rail line. It's been allowed to fall in disrepair, but you actually have people willing to invest a lot of money. And we're not talking about tyre kickers here. We're talking about people with significant financial interests. We're talking about people who have run successful businesses, multinational businesses, who are willing to come here because they see the vision, they know the potential that this project would have. Yet the member for Schubert in the Barossa Valley, who happens to be the Transport Minister,
yes,
cannot see the enormous tourist potential that this would have. It's mind-boggling. I just cannot understand it. And the fact is that the people who are pushing this idea haven't been able to go and see the Minister nor the Premier to actually make their case is extraordinary.
And indeed, despite many requests to speak to the Minister and to the Premier, both of them have turned a blind eye to this. What does that say?
Well, I just can't understand that. Firstly, the local member is there to represent his constituents, and you should always have your door open to speak to your constituents. And then when you have constituents that come to you with an idea that has a lot of merit, you want to be able to talk to them rather than just brush them aside. I think it's extremely arrogant and indignant that these investors haven't even had the opportunity to be able to put their case to both the Premier, who's the Tourism Minister, and also their local member, who's the Transport Minister, and who is actually responsible for that area of rail line.
It appears as though they're in the thrall and the vice-like grip of their bureaucrats. What's your view on that?
Look, I don't know where they're getting their advice from, but from wherever they're getting their advice from is ridiculous. Ripping up that rail line at Cromer's Crossing, it's a 108-year-old rail line. It's an enormous historical link in the state. To do that, to rip up that rail line, is symbolic of the ideology of this minister and this government, that they don't see a future in rail. And that, to me, again, is myopic, because, as we know, rail is embraced around the world. It is embraced by the biggest economies of the world. It forms part of a $10 billion program that has been put in place by the Australian government to try and get this type of infrastructure to open up our cities and our regions. South Australia, it's been left behind. It's almost like we're going back to the industrial era, pre-Robert Stephenson's rocket. That we're going back to an era where we're not interested in rail as a mode of transport for freight, for passengers into our regions, and also for the tourism potential that it presents. Look, I just can't comprehend it. And anyone I speak to who has an idea of the tourism potential that rail has, and not only the tourism potential but the economic benefits, they just shake their head and think, what's going on here? Why are they just refusing to embrace this and put more vehicles, more heavy laden vehicles on our roads that are of substandard, because they haven't spent much money on those, yet they're ignoring what was once a very viable regional rail network, which has been allowed to fall in disrepair.
And we, of course, are a very large state, and let's now broaden the rail issue to the state. To Mount Gambier, we would like to see a line to Murray Bridge, to the Mid-North, to Port Augusta, Whyalla, and so on. What's your view about the use of rail more generally in regional South Australia?
Well, it's underused, and the potential is there for it. You have to remember the grain interests that we have, the mining in those areas where freight is important, being able to move it efficiently and reliably. And this is where rail actually has it above normal road transport. It can be efficient, it can be economic, and it's an easy form of transport. And I can't understand why they're ignoring that. There are other areas in our region, particularly on Eyre Peninsula, the West Coast, where rail would be important. We have defence needs, and you'll be able to transport defence equipment quite easily to some of those training grounds they've got there. There's now talk of setting up the low-level radioactive waste in Kimber, and a perfect opportunity to be able to ship that there on a rail line. So, look, there are enormous potentials. There's also the development of a deep-sea port at Cape Hardy, and I know that there are interests there that want to see a rail line developed to this grain port. It has the backing of farmers in that area, and again, the potential is enormous. You need a government that has vision, and vision in the long term.
It would take a lot of very dangerous trucks off the road, Frank, wouldn't it? It would improve road safety as much as anything else.
Of course it would, and we're seeing that since they've taken the line from Eyre Peninsula, the grain line that was there. There are now an additional 30,000 truck movements of B and triple trucks that are using those roads, and they haven't spent any money on those roads there. They were never designed to take that amount of traffic. Look, again, it was short-sighted that they didn't upgrade and maintain that line, that rail line.
How will SA Best take this forward now?
Look, firstly, we're very passionate about rail, particularly to our regions. We see the benefits of that. As for the Barossa Valley Wine Train Initiative, we're going to support that to the hilt. And in fact, at the 2022 elections, we're going to make tourism in the Barossa Valley, which includes the wine train, an issue, and we'll be campaigning heavily on it.
Thank you very much.